Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. In the Zone, Pete Coles, Rich Sutter, the best hoop show in all of the United States right now, coming to you right in the middle of the season, and we're giving it to you straight. I wanted to start out this show, Pete, with just a little bit of a mention, if we might, and then we're going to jump right into Pete's Corner. Okay? Folks, the shirt I'm wearing in front of you was a shirt given to me by one of our food service directors, food service workers up at Westfield State, Johnny. Johnny is #1 stir-fry man in all of the eastern United States. He is a superstar on this team and unbelievable. They have a guy named Sean, and every time I look up in the stands at one of our away games, there's Sean. And I just wanted to mention them because a lifetime of service to people is something truly special. And they take such wonderful care of our students, wonderful care of our people. They got a great team. They got Babalu, they got Rachel, they got all these great people who show up every day to take care of our students. I wanted to mention them today because they're the absolute best. And Johnny always has a saying to me. He says, Coach, when you and I come to work, we're #1. But when we go home, we're number 10. Nothing more true than that. But I wanted to quick shout out to all of those people who work so hard for our students and for us as well. We got a lunch table mafia over there of a group of people that eat every day. We have the athletic director. We have the chief information officer. We've got Jerry Maldonado. We got Kevin Urban. We got Jay Hastings. We've got wonderful people at our table who show up every day there to eat because it's a great $7 lunch.
Man, I'll have to sit down that someday. I know some of that crew.
And a thanks to our president, Linda Thompson, because Linda is a wonderful president and understands that we like to go in the lunchroom and eat. And so she has asked the new people who've come in, and to keep the prices reasonable for the staff so that the staff and faculty can be in there. And so, as you say, for $7, it's an unbelievable lunch, and the public is welcome too. So we do have a lot of the public that came in here after the storm we had where we opened up the facilities, and then the people just said, wow, this is pretty good. I'm going to keep coming.
Yep.
And so that's where we're at right now. But, Pete, I wanted to say thanks to them. They're unbelievable people.
That's a good crew since UMass Dining came in, I think, to help out.
They did.
And then you kind of launched a homegrown program up there, so that's pretty good. It's always been good when I've been up there. It's funny because I call it Sodexo, but when the UMass group came in to handle it and to manage it, a lot of the same people stayed. Yep.
Maria stayed. Bobby stayed. Gail stayed. Great people stayed all the way through and have had careers there that are unbelievable. So they're just special people. And I wanted to give them a moment. Okay, Pete, let's do it. We have Pete's Corner. Pete comes out with 3 3-pointers from deep, very deep lately. Oof, they've been very deep questions lately. Pete, when we started this, Pete does not give me the questions. We do not have any conversation. Pete is completely in his own silo about this. And Pete has come up with some remarkably in-depth questions about what's going on here. And it's just because of the bounce and vibration that's occurred between me and Pete, because we both have pretty good expertise in areas, and now we're bouncing off of each other. And sometimes those correlations really come back and you go, wow, I really didn't see it from that point of view. And now that I do, it adds much more depth. As I said, I always talk about depth. All right, Pete, first shot. Let's go.
All right. So I'm asking this question for a specific reason. I'll give you after your answer. The question is, should women's records be removed that were achieved by transgender athletes because of the executive order, or should they be left in?
Wow. You're trying to kill me.
There's a reason I'm asking it.
No. I hear you. Because it's going to be something that will be discussed and something that will have to be. It'll have to be met, right? You'll have to come to some understanding of that one way or the other. I'm kind of glad that it's not in my purview to come up with that understanding. Mm-hmm. But you kind of caught me off guard with the question because it's a great question, I'll be honest. And I don't really know. But I would say that what happens in one administration and what happens in the history of this country doesn't necessarily get wiped out in the future. And so what's done is done. And so I don't know the answer to that, Pete. It's the first time you've ever given me one that you've left me completely just a void of an answer there, because I just feel for everybody in this formula. I really, really do. I don't think they handled it well, but I do have empathy and kindness for everybody in this formula. So I'm kind of reluctant to jump into this too, because
well, here's why I asked the question.
It's really a third rail.
I asked the question because baseball really already has the roadmap for this. And the reason is because they left in the records for home runs and the home run championship in the steroids era, because at the time steroids were not banned in baseball. And so if you were caught with steroids after the ban, then any records you had were removed. If you were suspected of using steroids, or even if everybody knew you're using steroids, and even if it was proven you're using steroids in the era where it was legal, those records stood. So my thought is, hey, up until now, that's been the rule, is transgender women could compete in women's sports. So if those records are there, they have to stay. And now moving forward, if somebody breaks that record, then he breaks the record.
So you set me up there a little bit. I like that. You set me up there because I see what you're saying now.
That's why I asked the question.
And no, and you framed it beautifully. And now you've given me, again, like I said, we bounce off of each other, and you've given me some angle to look at this from that I had not previously looked at before. Under those like I said, when you have an issue of morality, of any type of let's call it a hot button issue, where there's a lot of feeling on both sides about this, okay? When you have that, and when you have anything that's in this country of that order, you have to, and Pete, you hit a home run today, Pete, you have to return to the rule of law. What was the rule of law in that day? It's just like saying, well, we should never have arrested people for marijuana in the past because now it's legal. Well, it wasn't legal back then.
Right.
And so they were arrested when it wasn't legal. And so then the law changed, and now you're on the right side of the law. And so I think that you brought something to light here that's pretty amazing. That's a great question, Pete. But let's get on to number 2.
All right. So if I had a hold your feet to the fire, who do you think are going to be the final 2 in the NCAA championship?
Alabama and Duke.
Alabama and Duke.
Yep.
Okay.
I've been watching a ton of basketball right now, and the Bill Self kind of illuminated to this the other day when somebody asked him. They said, "Why do you think there's parity?" And he said, because now you have to pay the players. And in the past, a Duke, a Kansas, or some of those teams could garner 3 top 25 players in a recruiting class.
Yeah, sure.
Now they can't afford that. And so there's, just like A.J. DeBonsa is going to BYU, which you wouldn't consider to be one of the elite schools, now you're starting to see anybody has a dollar, they can open up their recruitment significantly to a school that they may never have looked at before because they can match the dollar. And as these big schools start to manage these budgets, and there's a little bit of that cap of the $20 million, I think it's going to be very prevalent moving forward. I've said this from minute one. You have a shift, the paradigm shift. A lot of us don't like it, but the paradigm shift now for coaches has shifted onto return of investment. We spent $2 million on this guy, and he didn't help us. We spent $500,000 on this guy, and he was great.
Yep.
Or one of our opponents opted for this player, and we could have had him, and we spent more money on this guy than they spent on him, and he's player of the year. That's the new scrutiny. That'll be the new scrutiny. And, well, it should be.
All right.
And, well, it should be.
Final question.
Number 3.
As a coach, and you're heading right into the tournament time, March Madness, how do you get in enough practice time that you need to get into the tournament?
Great question. In our league, we have a bye week. So right now, we played last night, and now we're not going to play again until next Wednesday. And so I have a week off. I got to kind of measure that and metric that and see how we can do with it. But right now in this time of the season, you're probably looking at two different schematics here. Let me give it to you. Your players are desperately exhausted. They're fatigued. If you have a lineup where you've been playing a similar lineup all year long, you have a group of guys that play and a group of guys that haven't played. The group of guys that haven't played go into practice very fresh. The guys that are playing go into practice in a deleterious fashion. A lot of times they have to go to the training room. A lot of times they'll be seeking treatment for some injuries that they got that they can play through. And it's just, at this time of year, it's really, really rough. So with me, I have 2 games left in my year. First priority as an old physical education teacher, and this is always my priority, but right now it's more of a paramount priority, is don't get anybody hurt in practice. So we have to taper practice to ensure that happens. Number 2, you can't do that in the beginning of the year, by the way.
Right.
You cannot do that in the beginning of the year. You have to load it up and have full practices and go. Second piece of it is trying to maintain your shooting ability, because shooting is the thing that carries championships. Defense and shooting. One side you got to play, and the other side you got to make shots. And so that thing is really, really important. And then the piece of it for me is we gave a shout out to our food service people. Let's give a shout out to the Westfield State training staff as well, because we have Cheryl and we have a great, great crew there, you know, of former athletes, of former players. And what we do is we often will bring in to the gymnasium for at least a portion of practice the training staff, where we'll allow them to do some therapeutic measures with the team, stretching. We like ice baths. We like to get, you know, in the training room so we can do some of that stuff to get them healed up, to get them repaired. So right now you're looking at it, as a coach, this is the schematic. You want to grind them. You want to get ready. You got big games coming up. And then you look at them and go, how much can I get out of this? What's the value of this? And am I going to be working against myself if I go this way? And so that's what's on my mind as a coach right now. I want to make sure that my team's ready to perform. Whatever that entails, you want to make sure they're ready to perform. It's much easier for me to get them ready to perform when I'm in that nice big schedule, boom, 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 boom. When we have a week off, it becomes harder, because it's not as easy to get that game, you know, that game stuff going in practice, you know. So the games do keep you sharp, and the games are your exams. I'm a professor. The games are the exams. We learn the content knowledge of our students from the exams. We learn what they know from the exams. We learn their level of execution from the exams. They don't let people cut cadavers open without having do it the first time through on a silo, on a simulator, on something else. You know, they have to practice. You got to go through it. And so that's really what we're trying to do. But the other piece of it is too, Pete, at this time of the year, I'm going to throw this out for other coaches too. Practice how to win close games.
Scenario stuff.
Scenarios. Situations. We're down by 5. There's 2 minutes to go. Go. We're down by 3. 2 minutes to go. Go. You're up by 6. 3 minutes to go. So we do a lot of that at the end of the year as well, where we break it down into smaller snippets, but also give us scenarios that we have to perform in, practice in, so that when at the end of the game, and I'll give you this last one for all the coaches who might be listening, we all run our plays. We all have our sets. We all have our stuff that we love to run. The problem is that every one of the opposing coaches knows your stuff as well as anybody else does at this time of the year.
Yeah.
There's huddle, there's video, there's breakdown. They can cut your film up into 1 million pieces and feed it to their team 15 minutes at a time. Okay? So as a coach, you need to have 3 plays in your back pocket that you practice, that you don't run in games, that nobody really gets to see a lot. But at the end of that game, now we got 3 plays that we're going to run at the end of this game, and they're going to have the maximum result possible for us, which is hopefully score, get fouled, stop the clock in our favor so that we can set our defense and be really good coming back the other side. So, Pete, 3 great ones. 3 great ones. Let's shift, let's move, let's slide to the baseline, Pete. Let's go to Power 15 in the NBA. I love our graphics. I love looking up at that thing and seeing our graphics. The NBA right now, where are we, Pete? We're not even at the All-Star break, although you can see that the OKC Thunder have played 53 games so far. All-Star break normally used to be at 42 games. But I think when they threw the cup thing in there, extended it out a little bit. But now we do have the All-Star game. And I don't mind saying this, folks. It's a fiasco. It's a fiasco. We needed more Chuck. We needed more Kenny. We needed more Shaq. Just what I needed. Turn on my TV. I need more Shaq. I turn on my TV every day and say, I hope that Gold Bond commercial is on because I need a Shaq attack today, baby. No, nobody's saying that right now, folks. That's one of the reasons the NBA stinks. You don't change out the laundry, folks. OKC Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I ask all the players on my team or any of the young guys that are around, who's the MVP? Shai is the answer they come back with. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I can tell you, these guys watch the NBA. These guys, my guys follow the NBA. They know it. Cleveland Cavaliers, number 2, 44-10. They've come back a little bit, Pete, but they're also fighting and holding on. We got to get to the understanding that this is one of the better teams in the NBA. I thought this was a bit of an anomaly at first when I watched them in the beginning of the season. But after watching them go, watching them play, they just have a really, really good fit and a good feel for each other. And in basketball, that wins, baby. Fit, feel, chemistry. Pete and I talk about it all the time on this show. It works.
Oh, absolutely.
It works. You're going to see the Boston Celtics, Pete. They were the victors, the champions. Same thing happened to Denver. NBA life is hard with a target on your back. Everybody's looking for the Celtics now, 39-16. I love Joe Mazzulla's press conferences because he's just so funny sometimes and just so cool about it. But the team does have some real issues to address. And if you don't address them, you won't repeat. And I know Boston fans are excited about that. And then you have what I consider to be NBA executives possibly on the other side praying for the LA Lakers to get into the finals. Because right now they need major market. When the NBA is in trouble, they return to formula. And the formula is major market arena. Same reason Patrick Ewing wound up in New York on the first lottery draft. Same reason Shaquille O'Neal left Orlando and went out to L.A. and got teamed up with Kobe Bryant. Same reason Magic Johnson went out to L.A. and teamed up with Kareem. It's Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. It's major market. And the Celtics early on kind of blew that up because now the Celtics, not a major market, but they like Boston. I think it's East Coast anyway. As long as they can go East Coast, West Coast, I think they've won. But the Celtics, having all those older championships, put them into rarefied eras. They're the champs of the champs now. And so they're in the middle of this. The NBA executives, they want the Knicks and the Lakers. I promise you that. Memphis Grizzlies, 36-17, surprise team of the year. Zach Edey has really helped them in a lot of ways. He's anchored that middle for them. And Morant's been out a lot. John Morant's been out a lot, man. I don't know. It's one of those guys maybe you can live without. New York Knicks, 36-18, but maybe playing the best basketball right now again. They're up, down, They're nothing linear with the Knicks right now, but they're moving in the right direction, well coached, and I think they're going to pull it together at the end. If you ask me, Pete, the same question that you asked me earlier in the show about the NBA Finals, I think you're going to be looking at the Knicks could get there. The Knicks in the East could get there. The East is not great. If you're telling me the Knicks can't beat the Cavaliers, I'd tell you might not be thinking clearly. Denver Nuggets, they're hanging around, and they're very hot right now. Starting to play good basketball. Rash of injuries. They got Joker holding the anchor down there, but they've had some other players that had traditionally done pretty well for them that are struggling right now. Struggling. Los Angeles Lakers, Pete, 52-20. They were really, really hot until they got smoked by the Jazz last night. And I mean smoked by the Jazz. Leading many on social media to opine that Luka might be looking for a trade back to Dallas. There's no defense on this team, Pete. There's no defense on the Los Angeles Lakers. None.
Didn't we show that earlier in the year?
And then they made a trade which made it worse.
Yeah.
Did you really honestly assess your team and think bringing in the guy who is maybe I don't know if I could go this far down, but he's in the lower 5 percentile of defenders in the entire NBA. And you thought that was the guy to bring in next to your 42-year-old guy who has trouble bending his knees. All right. Houston Rockets, nobody called me, Pete. Houston Rockets, 34-20. They've slipped a little bit. They were up, but now they've slipped a little bit. And that's going to be normal. Going to be normal for them. They're not great, but they're very well coached, and they're very young and mercurial. So you'll see some of that thermometer up and down rise. But right now, if you would have said, can you get me the Houston Rockets in the 8-hole of a Power 15, everybody in Houston's going to raise their hand and take that. Indiana Pacers, 30-23, just really well coached. You know, Rick Carlisle has figured it out, really well coached. Their offense is elite, but right now they just don't have great talent on that team. You know, they have some good players, but when you hold your stuff up against everybody else's stuff, it's not the the greatest roster in the NBA for sure. You got the Clippers, hard to be Harden, but right now the Clippers are maintaining they're a playoff team. They're above 500. And I kind of had them in a 500 hole. We'll see what happens after the All-Star break, what goes on with that. Minnesota, Timberwolves, real disappointment to me. Like where I saw OKC Thunder rising, I would have assumed Minnesota would rise too. Then they got involved with that trade with the Knicks, and they hammered themselves for the future. All right, Milwaukee Bucks. I think you're going to see Anthony Edwards want out of Minnesota now too. There's one of their great players. He's going to want to be marquee.
Yeah.
Once they get to Chicago, they're going to move him. Watch. Mavericks, you know, without Luka, they got absolutely throttled the other night. Can they recalibrate? Kyrie has been out. Daniel Gafford is out. I mean, that lineup right now is a mash unit. And also, you just traded away Luka Doncic for a guy who came in, played 30 seconds in a game, and pulled an abdominal strain. An abdominal strain in 30 seconds. Almost impossible. Okay, Detroit Pistons are my surprise team. I love what they're doing. They're going to make the playoffs, Pete. They were the absolute DFL of the entire NBA last year. They were dead last in every category, giving up too many points, giving up all of these losses in a row, 19, 20 losses in a row. This team right now, I don't know who's coaching them right now, but they're doing pretty good, man. They're doing pretty good. Golden State Warriors, they got problems too, Pete. They got problems too. All right. These are teams that are below the Mendoza line right now and will not make the NBA playoffs. A little bit surprising. The 76ers. How can you make the playoffs when your two best players don't play? Suns, not going to make the playoffs right now. Kevin Durant looking to get traded, I think, at the deadline because what's looming for the Suns is a little bit longer offseason than usual. The Spurs, below the Mendoza line. I know the NBA would love to do everything they can to get Wembanyama into a final playoff situation, but right now it's not going good. Pete, our Power 15 is 6'9" now. It was wildly out of balance in the beginning of the year.
Yep.
6'9", 6 East, 9 West. The West is still dominating. Here's our hot knot. Buster Poindexter. Who's hot, baby? All right. Who's hot? The Cavaliers are hot, and they've been hot.
Yeah, they are.
The Pistons won 4 in a row. Last year we were talking about, we had a whole segment on firing on all Pistons, how bad they were. Now I got to give them props, baby. I got to give them props. The Nets have won 3 in a row, Pete. Down in Brooklyn. They're cooking down in Brooklyn. OKC, 7 in a row. And the Nuggets have won 7 in a row. That's what we alluded to. They're hot. Who's not hot? The Pelicans. They're certainly not hot. They can't get their guys in uniform. They haven't traded them. They're just kind of really, really maybe one or two worst franchises in the entire NBA right now. And that's saying something because the Charlotte Hornets took an Xbox from the kid at Christmas. We don't forget, Pete. Wiz have lost 4 in a row. The Sixers have lost 5 in a row. And the Bulls, Billy, No D Donovan, 4 in a row. Okay, Pete. Here's your all-star fiasco. Pending fiasco.
Okay.
So you have Team Shaq, Team Chuck, Team Kenny, and the Castro Rising Stars, of which there happens to be 4 teams of that, which will now have some sort of playoff win, and then that Young Gun Stars team gets to come up and go into that 4th spot of an NBA All-Star game. So instead of 2 teams, East and West, you got 4 teams: Venus, Mars, Uranus, and Pluto. Because it ain't on this planet, folks. All right. Team Shaq. Pretty good team right here, though, Pete. LeBron, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis. He'll be pulled now because of the injury, but I would love to see him and LeBron back on the same floor, just not in the same jersey. Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Dame Lillard, James Harden, Jaylen Brown, and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie matched back with his Celtics teammates of yore. I don't think those guys probably. Do you think Tatum and Kyrie played together? I think they might have for a little bit of time.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit of a crossover.
A little bit of time. I don't think Jaylen Brown and Kyrie did, though. I'm not sure about that. All right, that's Team Shaq. Team Kenny, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson of the Knicks, Jaren Jackson, Timmy. These were drafted, too. So Kenny went with a pretty young group here. Jalen Williams, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, and Tyler Herro. Now, my understanding of this was it was fan voted, and then these guys drafted from within the top vote getters. That was my understanding. So the fan is still involved, which I like. Team Chuck Wagon. Team Chuck Wagon. All right? They're going to be eating steak and fries for pregame meal. You can be sure of that. Nikola Jokic. Big man up front. Giannis. SGA. Wembayana. Wow, this team's loaded. Pascal Siakam, Alperen Sengun from the Rockets, Karl Anthony Towns, Donovan Mitchell, and Trae Young. I got to give the Chuck Wagon team a little bit of props there. All right?
Are fans still going to say this at the end?
Oh, my God, who the hell cares?
There will be millions in unison. So let's just.
I mean, they're trying to get. It's a gimmick.
It's gimmicky. It's something.
It's no different than football gimmick or the football gimmick for the Pro Bowl, or you know what? The best one I've seen is the NHL one. At least it's countries.
Okay, let's take it back to say the 15th century. The peasants are outside the castle.
Yes,
and they're throwing rocks at the castle. They're bombing the castle with rocks because the peasants are starving. So they go inside the castle. They huddle up and they go, "What shall we give the peasants? We will give them an all-star fiasco that they will love. And if they don't love it, they'll be so wildly distracted from all of our other problems that they'll only talk about this." And everybody around the room gives a harumph, and they vote and they go, "Let's go." And the castle door opens and they charge everybody to go in. And everybody sits there, runs back outside, and starts throwing rocks at the castle again. Okay? I hope that explains that a little bit better to our fans who might have a history buff side to them. Okay. Pete, this is a team, both of these entities are from different areas. The Castrol Rising Stars are exactly that, the Rising Stars. They're either first year or sophomore year players in the NBA. And they made 4 teams out of them, drafted by Chris Mullin, because it's in Golden State this year, the NBA All-Star game. So they took 4 old Golden State Warriors, Chris Mullin, Mitch Richmond, Tim Hardaway, and they're letting Jeremy Lin, who was a former Knick, be the coach and general manager of the other team. All right, here's some names that they have in the team. Mullen's team has Stephen Castle from UConn, Ryan Dunn, Zach Edey, Keontae George, Trace Jackson Davis went from where In the Zone told you he was a lottery pick. Well, he went from all the way down in the 57 second round hole to an all-star. You got to listen to us, NBA people. Dalton Connect and Jalen Wells. Imagine having been traded like Dalton Connect was last week, and then being rescinded, and then have to return to the team that traded you. That can't be that cool.
No.
All right. Again, Team Mitch, Tumani Kamara, Bub Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Scoot Henderson. I have no idea why they put him on this. Yves Missy, Amen, and Osar Thompson. Anthony Black with Team Hardaway, Tristan Da Silva, Grady Dick, Jamie Jaquez, Zachary Satcher, Alex Sarr, and Kason Wallace. Reese Etcher and Sarr were the 1 and 2 pick this year. We never mentioned them on this show. The number 1 and number 2 pick in the NBA draft, never mentioned. Where's Reed Shepherd? That's what I want to know from all you great NBA gurus that picked him 3rd overall in the draft. Where is he? What are his numbers? How's he doing? We told you. Jeremy Lin, they got Mac McClung. He's not even in the NBA. They bring this guy back for an NBA dunk contest. He's not even in the NBA, and he won the NBA dunk contest. So you have somebody who's not in the NBA dunk contest winner. It's awesome.
How do they get away with that?
Because people keep buying tickets, and people keep. This would be a great venue
the guy in
to
the
do
G
this.
League or something?
This would be a great venue to do this because this is the only voice that people have is their ticket stub.
Yeah.
It's their television. Okay? So if you're really upset at this, really don't like it, really don't want it, you're going to have to send a really strong message at some point. What would that message be? One message would be to have these, because the NBA All-Star Game for the last 5 to 7 years has been a complete embarrassment to the NBA. That's why they're shifting it like this, because they couldn't get anybody to play hard. And they scored 200 points in an All-Star Game. It's an absolute disgrace to basketball. How do you get to make more choices after that? I don't know. Anybody in any organization that makes a call like that gets their head on a platter. Anybody. Not in the NBA. It's just like politics. You can keep failing upward. All right. Philadelphia Freedom. This ought to be illegal. Paul George has uploaded more podcast clips than he has field goals made this year. He has 228 podcast clips and counting. He's got 191 field goals at probably like 40 million per. This is
nice to be a podcaster.
This is the era of the NBA being a second job. It's his second job. Okay. Congratulations to Kevin Durant. I like Kevin Durant. When Kevin Durant got a chance to be MVP, he turns to the crowd, looks dead straight at his mother, and goes, "Mom, you're the MVP." I had tears in my eyes when I heard that, man. I was rolling around on my living room floor.
That's pretty solid.
If I don't even like the guy, I would love him after this.
Yep,
if I didn't like him as a player, and I do like him as a player very much, I would love him after this, and I've loved him ever since. So he becomes one of the 30,000-point club. And his comment, I should have wrote it down word for word, but I'll paraphrase it. It's such an honor to be in this group of people that are so accomplished, and I came into the league to try and work hard and accomplish things, and I feel like I have. Just another unbelievable quote from this guy with humility, and that's the standard, folks. All of you other guys out there that are tapping yourself on the head and pumping yourself on the chest, it takes a man to point the fingers to somebody else's direction and give credit. And when you look at your mom, and your mom is the MVP, and you look at her and you say that, that means to me that you're a great man, and you've got class, and you've got dignity, and those are things that cannot be bought with your $50 million contract. Okay, 30,000 club. Pete, who else is in it? LeBron, Kareem,
Yep.
Karl Malone, the mailman,
Yeah.
Kobe, Dirk Nowitzki, Michael Jordan, and Wilt Chamberlain.
Wow.
Julius Erving of UMass fame is considered to be in the 30,000 K club if you count his NBA and NBA days. Okay, Pete, if you will, let's slide into our NCAA segment of the show. Do the Power 25, Super 25. This is getting really hard, Pete. I don't know. Every day I go do this, it's like NBA stuff's easy. NBA, I can do the NBA Power 15 in 5 to 7 minutes. 8, 10 tops. When I do this, it takes days. I start on Tuesday. I list everybody out, but then I got to watch the game on Tuesday. I got to watch the game on Wednesday. And when you have 11 top 25 AP teams losing in one day, that snow globe is shaking. That snow globe is cracking right here in the middle of February, Pete. But there are some some things that are showing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as I got a new segment in the show we're going to call Baselines. All right, Super 25, Pete. Auburn, they had a loss last week, and it was a tough loss, but I'm still holding them up there because of the power of everything they've done. And right now, you have a lot of teams in free fall. I was ready to go Duke, number one. Ready to put John Shire's Blue Devils right up there, number one. They lost the game. The only game I said, Pete, that they might lose for the rest of the year, they got clipped. They went into Brownell Stadium. They should call it Brownell Stadium. It's Little John. They should call it Brownell Stadium down in Clemson, and they got them. They got them for their third loss. So I got Florida in the number 2 spot. I love this team. Also fighting through some injuries. But you got Elijah Martin. You got Walter Clayton. You have one of the best backcourts in the entire country, and they have size, depth, pretty good team. I think that team, like I said, Alabama, because I love the way Alabama's playing right now, and I kind of like the way Duke's playing right now. But I think Duke is more susceptible to an NCAA bump than Alabama is right now. Duke's young. Houston, they dive on the floor. They take charges. They play the hardest version of basketball in the NCAA, and it shows. All over the last 5 years, if you pick one team that's been dominant over the last 5 years, you wouldn't pick UConn, Pete. They had a great run. But Houston, over the time of that, without a national title, obviously, but have done amazing, amazing work. Duke at 21-3. Tough loss to Clemson, but I didn't want to bounce them that far because this life on the road is rough. Tennessee, 20-5. Look at the SEC, Pete. Auburn, Florida, Alabama, all SEC. Every single one of them. 1, 2, 3. The football conference of old has hyperspaced into basketball and are running away from everybody else. They're running away from the ACC. They're running away from the Big Ten. They're actually running away from the Big 12 too. All right. St. John's, they had a rough loss last night at Villanova, a 2-point loss, but they're playing great basketball, 21-4. Other people have them way, way down. I don't get it. They have a great coach. They got a good team, and they're going to be right there at the end. And right now, they're in first place in the Big East. Texas Tech, 18-5. JT Toppin, the young man they brought in from New Mexico, really, really good player. But if you look at New Mexico later on in our poll here, imagine if that young man had stayed with New Mexico and what they could be doing as well, too. You got to consider this, fellas. You might get a few more dollars, but at New Mexico, you could have been maybe a Final Four team. There's memories there. There's dreams there still, all right? Yep. Don't let the dollar wash away every single thing that you had hoped for. Okay, Michigan State, 19-5. Izzo is trying now to eclipse Bob Knight as the all-time winningest coach in the Big Ten. Go check out his comments. The way he was laudatory towards Coach Knight, the way he spoke of Coach Knight, and the way he spoke of himself in relation to that. Humility, grace, dignity. It goes a long way, folks. All right, St. Mary's. This guy, Randy Bennett's got it going, man. They cooked Gonzaga in the West, and if you're going to tell me with all of these jobs open that you have Indiana, Miami, Florida State, Virginia open right now, and you're not thinking about talking to Randy Bennett, you're crazy. Purdue, 19-6. They're in the top of the Big Ten, though. They're in the top of the Big Ten. And that's just a great, great credit to Coach Painter. This guy can really coach basketball. He might be the most underrated coach in the entire country. Wisconsin, 19-5. I love it because it's a lower-level coach that moved up. One of the things that I think has been a problem in college basketball, I had a great discussion with a good friend, Jim Englehart, this morning. And I said, one of the problems is that they never, ever look Division I schools because they can't win the press conference with a Division II or Division III head coach. All right? You have a situation where they don't look at Division II and Division III head coaches as real. And so they hire a lot of times people who haven't coached before. And those numbers, especially you're looking at Doug Gottlieb, it was at Green Bay, and looking at some other places, it's had good results, it's had mixed results. But I don't say don't hire those guys as well. Everybody deserves opportunity. But the way that the lower levels are looked on has been deleterious to basketball. You've got the young man who took a St. Thomas Aquinas job, jumped into FDU, and then wound up beating Purdue in the NCAA tournament. He's now the head coach of Iona. You have this young man named McCallum who came up from a Division II school. Great record in that Division II school. He's now the head coach at Drake, 22-3. They're in the national consideration for Coach of the Year. So if you ADs out there want to have a good basketball team, you'll diversify your hiring portfolio. There's a lot of great coaches down on this level, a lot of really good young ones that deserve a chance to move up. Some of us didn't get that chance. That's okay. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't work to get the other guys up because they deserve on being up. And I could give you a list, a list of Division III and Division II coaches that are certainly worthy of that opportunity. Okay? But that's why I jumped in there, because the Wisconsin coach is a former D3 coach. Texas A&M, 19-5. And the guy who won the national titles, Bo Ryan, at Wisconsin, was a Division III coach as well. Went all the way and won the national title with Wisconsin. Texas A&M, 19-5. Arizona, 17-7. A lot of losses, but they came early. And I like this Arizona team because it was the first time I got to see them live the other day. They have some talent. I don't know what's going on there. They need a defensive coordinator is what they really need. They don't play very good defense. Iowa State, they got pummeled last week in the Big 12, and they took a powder. They're having some injuries in their backcourt, and that's been a focus. Right here, 16, New Mexico. Rick Pitino has St. John's turned around, but his son Richard has done a great job out in New Mexico as well. And if you're going to now open up some of these other jobs, he has to be in consideration for some of those other bigger jobs because he's done very well. Michigan, 19-5, 1 year. This is what these ADs are looking at right now. Louisville, Michigan, Vanderbilt, they all changed coaches. They all went and got reputable, experienced coaches. DePaul went to get Holtzman out of Ohio State. They got reputable, experienced coaches, and as a result, they've been able to turn that program around with NIL money, portal additions in 1 year. And so Michigan right here, you're looking at them, now they're in the top 25. Last year, they were sucking swamp water. DePaul has a chance now to get up and get rolling. Louisville is the best turnaround story in the country, and that young man, Kelsey, should be given some consideration for National Coach of the Year for that turnaround as well. So Maryland, I like this team. I think they have. I like backcourts. If you got good guards, you're going to be good. But this team has one of the best front courts, and I think this could matter in an NCAA tournament. Derek Queen, Julian Reese, really good up front. I have them both on my NBA draft board. Clemson. This guy can coach, man. They've been talking about years, Fire Brownell. And maybe some of these other schools, might want to look at Brownell now too and give him a full complement, a full budget, full NIL, and see what he can do. Because him and Greg McDermott, to me, are two really good coaches that if UVA knocked on Greg McDermott's door, he'd have to listen to him, I think. Just better resources. He'll be able to get much better players at UVA than he can at Creighton. And that's a fact of life. And the Big East, to be honest with you, is dying. The Big East is dying because they never, ever made the adjustment for the football. Okay, SMU, they changed coaches, doing really well. It matters. Coaching matters. Utah State, 22-3. They just keep losing coaches. Odom went from there to VCU. And now you got a new guy in there, Jared Calhoun. Doesn't matter. They just reload and keep going. Memphis, I like this team. I like what Hardaway's done with them. They play good defense. They're athletic, and they can cause anybody in the country problems. You saw what happened with the UConn game. UCLA and Missouri right there packaged up. I like this Missouri team. UCLA, as long as they can stay on the West Coast to Mid-Coast, they're good. Every time they go to the East Coast, they get pummeled. But nobody told you to jump into the Big Ten, fellas. You didn't know that was going to happen around that castle table room where they were throwing rocks at your window, and then you went into UCLA Castle. I go Louisville here, Pete. I go Louisville here. Let's keep you updated, folks, on Coach of the Year, Player of the Year right now. And this, I think, I'm going to put them in order. All right? Bruce Pearl at Auburn, great coaching job this year. Nate Oates at Alabama. They lost so much talent to the NBA in the last couple of years, and they just keep reloading. They love to shoot that three ball. Love the three ball. Kelsey from Louisville, you have to give him consideration. Have to. That team was a turtle, flipped over on its back, came in 1 year, turn that thing around. And it's not because of the talent. It's because of the way they're playing. It's because of his attention to detail, because of him knowing his way around those sidelines. Golden at Florida, he was cleared of the Title IX stuff. Might as well bring that up. Everybody brings it up when they get accused. Very, very few people bring it up when he gets cleared. My friend was cleared, so good news all around for the Florida team. Sampson of Houston, man, he should be into consideration every single year for what he's done with his program. And if we're going to give out a coach of the last 5 years, it's definitely Calvin Sampson. And you got to consider John Shire of Duke. You know, I was critical of him, and he falls into that category of getting the Duke job with never, ever having coached a game before. You know, I have no problem with John Shire getting a UMass job. I have no problem with Hubert Davis getting North Carolina or Elon. You know, a job that's a middle-of-the-road job, but you're going to turn over the biggest jobs in the country to guys who have not coached before. I was critical, but I'm going to give Shire credit because he's been able to maintain it. If they didn't have the roster that they have, which is far better than everybody else because they're killing everybody in recruiting, they'd be in trouble right now, just like everybody else. Cooper Flagg is going to be Player of the Year, Pete. Tell everybody right now, Cooper Flagg is going to be Player of the Year. Janai Broom will come in second. Walter Clayton, Mark Sears, two great guards, having unbelievable careers. Right there. I'm going to throw in R.J. Luis from St. John's. Unbelievable. P.J. Haggerty. He's not one of those big Power 5 guys. But of all the people on that list, Haggerty might be the one who deserves it the most. He won't get it because he's at Memphis. But he might deserve it the most. All right. SEC hyperspace. You've all watched Star Wars. You see what happens at hyperspace. It goes whoom, sucked into the black hole. Everybody else is in the black hole right now, and Auburn is hyperspacing with elevation that's rare. Florida, Alabama. You have Kentucky playing great basketball. This conference was once known as a football conference. They're running away from everybody. The first time ever, the AP team, the top 5, there were 4 teams from one conference. It happened this year. John Calipari says it might be the best conference of all time. He might be right, but he's also in 14th place. All-time NCAA wins, Pete. What team do you think has the most wins of all in NCAA complete history?
Complete history? I would think UCLA.
That's a good one. That's a great guess. It's interesting to me because I went through this, and then I wanted to see what year did they start?
Okay.
How many opportunities have they had because not everybody started in the same year? So I'll give you some. Kentucky's number 1. UCLA is certainly on the list, but Kentucky's number 1. 2,413. They started in 1906.
Okay.
Kansas is number 2. But they started in 1898. So they have 8 more years on Kentucky, but Kentucky's got the W's. UNC is 3rd. I know the Duke people are unhappy about that, but you got about 70 wins between you and the Tar Heels right now, all time. If things keep trending the way they are, I don't know. That's going to take 5 or 6 years. But they'll catch them. Here's a surprise for you, Pete. Temple
Wow.
is 6th, right after UCLA 5. UCLA has 2017. Did not begin the program, though, Pete, until 1920. So if you went back and added a total of 20 wins going back to 1898, and you had 22 more in there at 20 wins, that's another 400 in there. They're right up in consideration. They'd be right there with 2,400. So Syracuse, right in there. Jimmy Boeheim and the boys were there for years and years and years with great records. Also devoured more cannolis than anybody probably in the history of the NCAA. Notre Dame, St. John's, and Purdue. Okay, this is the baseline section I wanted to get into, Pete. We got a bunch of stuff going on that we always talk about, Power 5 and the big conferences, and in the NBA you talk about all the All-Stars and stuff like that. I'm going to get a baseline together for the NBA, but right now I put one together for the NCAA. Just some stuff of interest to our fans that make you go, It might make you go, yep, we thought so. It might make you go, wow, how did that happen? All right? So let's just take a look at it. We call it Baselines of Conference Intrigue. Bryant lost their coach, Jared Grasso, got scandaled up, run out the door, and then they turned the job over to an interim coach, Phil Martelli Jr. Everybody kind of was waiting to see. Bryant is in first place in America East. They're 9-1, and they're the number 1 seed right now. Kudos to the AD for making that choice, for having the courage to go to the assistant coach, not want to rock the boat much further, and the rewards are there. Bryant, Bulldogs are in first. Memphis, number 1 in the America Athletic Conference. Beautiful season for them. And in that conference, they're a little bit, North Texas is right there, but they're running away from everybody. Memphis, they're the best team in that league. George Mason, 10-1. I'd like to go back and see where they were picked preseason polls, because they were nowhere near number 1. Dayton was number 1. VCU right there. They're nowhere near that, but now they're in the first place. They're in the first place pocket, and that's unbelievable. In the A-10. UMass had a really tough loss to Davidson. They had been playing great basketball, and they slipped up, but they're still, in that 4 and 5 range. What happens in these big conferences now is you can get a 2-day bye if you finish in the top 4.
Okay.
So that's what everybody's playing for right now in the A-10. They're all looking for that 2-day bye. And otherwise, you're going to have that first segment that's in the lower half that's going to play that first day. Then if they win, they got to come back and play the next day against a team that didn't play. And then if they win, they got to come back and play against a team that hasn't played in 2 days. That's what makes it really rough to go out on the road when you're a lower seed and win. Okay? Dayton is 6-5 in the A-10. They were picked first. I have no idea what's happening with them. But I will tell you this. I think sometimes promises made aren't always promises kept. And we can go back and take you back to the Colorado football team, where there's a lot of talk about them going into their bowl game, but having run out of NIL money, not being able to meet the bills and the promises that they had. And so when you see some of these teams that just fall off the ledge, a lot of times I think you're going to have some of that internal combustion going on in the locker room, and it's over dollars and cents, it's over NIL. And I don't know. I watched them beat UConn earlier in the year. And I was like, wow, the rest of the A-10's really got something to look at. They're 6-5. Clemson is right behind Duke, folks. Right behind Duke, and they just beat Duke. Louisville is number 3 in the ACC. I promise you, they were 18th or 17th last year. They were dead on their back last year. Coaching matters, folks. UNC is number 7. North Carolina, Tar Heels, I love you people. I used to work basketball camp. We sent Kenny Smith there from Malloy, one of our guys from Malloy. Kenny Anderson was down at Georgia Tech in North Carolina. Kevin Joyce, a lot of guys, North Carolina, South Carolina, a whole pipeline of people down in that area. But right now, they're going to the NIT, folks. They're going to the NIT. Maybe. Miami, 1-11 in the league, 5-18. They're DFL. Another example of what happens when promises made can't be promises kept. The NIL situation fell apart down there. They were one of the first people to jump in on it. And then it fell apart. Right now, they're going to be scrambling. They'll be looking for a new coach. NC State, 2-10, 9-14, off of a Final Four visit. Now, you have what I refer to as rabid fan bases or rabid boosters. Now, Pete, who do you think makes the call on these coaches?
You would think the AD, but it's not quite so.
It's no longer the AD. It's not the president. It's the guy who's giving the most NIL money. Mm-hmm. Okay? So if they went to the Final Four last year, but you get a group of those high-heeled donors who fall out of love with the coach, despite the fact he went to the Final Four, Kerry Keats is in trouble because they're almost DFL in the ACC. And at NC State, they have this vision of national championship, Final Four all the time. And once they've done it once, they can't understand why they can't do it every year. It's not rational, but that's the way a lot of those people think. BC, never has this team ever been able to come up with anything close to a good basketball season in the last 15 years. My guy Jim O'Brien was the last time they were any good. They fired Al Skinner. They fired a bunch of people. They keep going through coach after coach after coach. You got to stop looking at the coaches, folks, and you got to start looking at the program. What are the things holding you back? The campus is gorgeous. They have football. They got everything. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Arizona's number 2 in the Big 12. That's what I was saying. They've lost a bunch of games early on that I shook my head at. But right now, they're right next to it in the Big 12, and that's something to say. Houston, number 1 in the Big 12. Kelvin Sampson is going to produce. Kelvin Sampson is going to get his team ready. Colorado, 0-12, 9-14. They lost 3 NBA players last year. Do you think the coach could be in trouble? You better believe it. Arizona State, 3-9 and 12-11. That's Bobby Hurley, not Danny Hurley. I don't know. I don't know that he survives. St. John's, number 1 in the Big East. Rick Pitino, potentially coach of the year situation. I'm going to tell people at St. John's something too. If there's a job that pops up that Pitino thinks is better than your job, he's gone. He's gone. Creighton is number 2 in the Big East. Greg McDermott, great coach, great job this year. They lost Shearman, Alexander, just doing a great job. But the Big K is in the middle there, and they're doing okay as long as they got him. Seton Hall, wow, DFL in the Big East. Last place, 1-12. Keep an eye on that. Villanova, 7-6, 14-10. Kyle Neptune was the coach at Fordham for 1 year. I'm not sure what his record was, but when Jay Wright decided to leave Villanova, they caught themselves kind of by surprise. They didn't anticipate that Wright would leave. Nobody did. But when you got caught, you got caught. They panicked, and they went to Kyle Neptune, who had coached 1 year at Fordham, and it'll be a miracle if he makes it out of there this year. Purdue, number 1 in the Big Ten. Purdue all the way. Penn State, 3-10, 13-11. Again, I don't know, like BC, when you have that great of a football team, some of it should be able to translate into what you got in basketball. It doesn't. Rutgers, 5-8. They paid huge money for those guys to bring in those young freshmen. They got 2 of the best freshmen in the country. It has not translated. Stony Brook, my wife's alma mater, out there on the ocean, State School of New York. They went into that Colonial Conference. I don't know why, but boy, are they rough. Having a rough year. 2 for 10, 6 for 19. Here's a good one for you, Pete.
Can I give a shout-out for one?
Go ahead.
Atlantic Sun Conference. The boys I met over the summer down in Florence, Alabama. University of North Alabama, 9-3 for a 4-way share of the conference lead.
Wow.
17-8 overall. They're 10-1 at home, 6-7 on the road, and 3-game win streak.
100% we give them a shout-out. 100%.
They're the Atlantic Sun, so they could have a shot at a bid.
Woof. Let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Let's keep an eye on that. If they're your guys, Pete, we want to keep an eye on
Got to meet them over the summer. Great bunch of guys. They were working out doing their summer practices, and great bunch of guys. And
you find that on the levels of low Division I. Like I worked in a Patriot League, and it was always been a dream of mine to coach in the Ivy League because they're just such great people to work with.
Yep.
You know, these great young people. The future is always a great place to work. But especially with the great young people, everybody sits there and goes, man, these kids these days, I don't know. It's nothing like that. Nothing like that.
All working together, the football team guys
nothing
along
like
with
that.
the basketball team and the women's team. And
Nothing like that. That's what I don't get. But here we go with Gottlieb. I got a new nickname, Pete. It's called Gottlieb. Okay? His name is Doug Gottlieb. Very good basketball player. Father was a coach. They hired him at Green Bay, Wisconsin, when he had never coached a day in his life. He was a podcaster, which they allowed him to keep his podcast. He left his team to prepare for an upcoming game, and he went to attend the Super Bowl. Okay? What does that mean? It means they've already told him.
Yeah, okay.
You're gone. That's what that means. Yale, number 1, Vicky Chun, my favorite AD maybe in the country in Division I. Worked with her at Colgate, love VC, great athletic director. I got bad news for you, though. Your basketball coach is going to be at the top of our list as somebody that should be hired at UVA. James Jones has done a remarkable job at Yale. He is a quality basketball coach and a great person. Some of these lower level coaches got to move up. You got to move them up. And these guys, stop saying they can't take the jump from Yale to Virginia. It's ridiculous. The guy can coach. The guy can coach flat out. Give him a shot. Hey, VC, I'm sorry about that. But they're 7-0 in the Ivy League, number 1, and this guy's record of accomplishment is incredible. Merrimack, Joey Gallo, number 1 in the MAC, and they are playing a zone that's one of those zones that a lot of people are having trouble figuring out right now. Canisius, the Golden Griffs, St. Bonaventure rival. 2-21, Pete. DFL in the MAC.
Ouch.
And that job is a really tough job. I like Jim Christian there. I think they'll get it turned around a little bit because he used to be the head coach at BC. But who knows? Drake, 12-2, number 1 in the Missouri Valley Conference. Where did their coach come from, Pete? Everybody looks around and goes, where did they find this guy? Oh, my God, how did they find him? They found him in Division II, where he had been crushing it for years. Found him in Division II. Dave Hickson is in the Hall of Fame. Princeton was going to hire him. They said no to him. The guy they hired is no longer in the business. Dave Hickson's in the Naismith Hall of Fame. Pete, I think we're out of time.
Yes, we are.
Unbelievable. I'll save the rest for later. Folks, hang in there. It's cold, but we're in February. March is right around the corner, and you are in the zone.